Welcome to episode 60 of the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, Liberty Training with an Ethological Approach and Positive Reinforcement with David Lichman. Now, I first heard about David Lichman when I was kind of deep in my Parelli studies. And I think I also heard about him through Karen Rolfe, which if you're a listener of the podcast, you know that I love Karen Rolfe's work. And I think David was Karen's first introduction to Parelli natural horsemanship at the time, many years ago. So who is David? David Lichman is a 5-star Master Parelli Professional with a specialty in Liberty horses. He teaches worldwide, helping students find a better relationship with their horses and the relaxation and posture fundamental to all riding. David has performed with his 3-horse act, which includes bridle-less riding and riding to music. He is the creator of the DVD set Liberty Outside the Round Pen, which I have personally bought and watched and used in my own training, enabling students to play at liberty with exuberance in large open areas. David lives in California with his wife, 2 children, 9 horses, 4 dogs, 4 cats, and dozens of chickens, pigeons, and canaries. So you can tell he is definitely an animal lover. In David's words, I don't see them as horses, I see them as friends. And I just loved when David mentioned this in the podcast. He goes on to say, they have names, desires, and needs, as do I. Friends help fulfill each other's needs and desires. In this episode, we discuss David's horsemanship journey and how he came to use a mix of positive and negative reinforcement in his training with horses, the common objections for both reinforcement styles and David's thoughts on those and why he uses both, some of the incredible things he has been able to achieve with multiple horses at Liberty, how to give your horse a happy life beyond the basic needs, insights from discussions that David has had with other famous trainers such as Katja Schumann, Frederick Pignon, and Bent Branderup, plus who else he would like to have dinner with, handy tools that David uses to get his horses itchy spots and prevent hock sores, plus all the usual fun horsemanship breakthroughs questions that you guys love. My first impression of David after speaking with him in this interview was that, I always knew that he was like a really kind of quirky and unique guy, but I really found him to be so humble. He's achieved some amazing things with horses, and I think at one point in the episode he said he doesn't even consider himself to be a great horseman, and he clearly is. So he's really humble. He's a really interesting person and clearly very good with horses. I know you're going to get a lot from this episode, and make sure you check out the links in the show notes as well, because he talks about some really cool things that he does with his horses, and I've got the links to those in the show notes. So if you want to have a look at those, just find them there. And of course, as always, if you love this episode, please screenshot and share it on social media, or maybe even forward it to a friend who you think might like the episode, because the more that we get the word out, the more that we can have a positive impact on the horse world. So I really appreciate every single share of the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. So thanks again for being here and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, a source for riding and training insights with the goal of helping your horse be a light, happy, and willing partner. I'm your host, Amalia Dempsey, a mainstream equestrian rider who discovered natural horsemanship and equine learning theory, and now I help riders like you achieve connection and communication with your horse so you can have more fun and fulfillment whilst prioritizing the partnership. Get more learning resources, including my free connection and communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com. Click the follow button so you don't miss an episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave me a rating and review, or screenshot this episode and share on social media. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome, David Lichman, to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. It's an absolute honor to have you on the show today. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
First up, can you tell us about your horsemanship journey to date, from when you got into horses and what has led to what you're doing today?
Oh, that's a long story. I'm 72. It all started in the 50s with the Lone Ranger, really. I don't know if you have him over there in Well, you're probably too young for starters, and
Yeah,
then
no,
I
I
don't know
don't
if
know about the Lone
I don't
Ranger.
know, the Lone Ranger didn't show up in Australia either, probably. Anyway, the Lone Ranger was it was originally a radio teleplay, and then it became a television show in the 50s. And this guy had a white horse named Silver, and at the opening of the show, he comes galloping up this hill on this white horse with the William Tell overture playing, dum, dun, 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 and he goes up on this hill and the horse rears. And then, there was from then on, the stories were uh irrelevant. There were horses. And that was that was a big thing for me, that somehow I triggered that I needed to be with horses, whether it was, pony rides or trail rides or, you know, uh, drugstore horses for a quarter, anything you could fork a leg over, that was for me. And as I grew up, there was a series called Mr. Ed. Are you familiar with Mr. Ed?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I watched those, and and I fell in love with this idea that you could communicate with animals. That's it's like a little bit of a Dr. Dolittle kind of a thing. And of course Mr. Ed was always smarter than Wilbur, and it was a lot of fun. And then not too long ago I watched every episode, all 123 of them again, just to look at the horse training, to see what's going on there, if there was anything interesting or exciting. Uh, but back to as a youth, I didn't really have very many opportunities to be with horses. I lived in a suburb of Boston, and it wasn't until I discovered that there was a barn down by the junior high school, and I went down there and I traded stall cleaning for, every day after school for once a week lessons riding Rex, Rex the Wonder Horse. And and that started me, but it was kind of hit and miss. I went to a riding camp. One summer I worked as like a groom on a trail riding thing in New Hampshire, but very sporadic uh, horse access to horses. I did take some riding lessons in college when I found out that instead of taking PE, I could take horseback riding. So
Oh,
I did,
perfect.
I did, I did that. I didn't like it so much because they made me post without stirrups, and I couldn't walk for a week. After just about my legs would just start to heal, and then I'd be up there doing it again. But then, life took me in other directions, and it wasn't until I got married in 1983 that my wife and I realized that we both loved horses, both wished we had horses, so we got them, and that's where it started. From there, I went and saw Ray Hunt, and that was an eye opener. Here's this, people sitting around at a state fair. They can't even understand what he's doing, and I'm looking at him, and he's holding up his finger and predicting which way the horse is going to turn and what the ear is going to do, and he's just, he's doing this miracle stuff. And so I went home and tried some of those things with my horses, and then the next year, Pat Parelli showed up at the same state fair, and they were starting colts. They were starting one colt per day uh, at 4:30 in the afternoon, when it was like in your temperature, 40 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, hot. And but I got to watch Pat, and then Pat had something to offer me in terms of uh, an outline. What Ray did was kind of mystical and kind of follow what you could, but Pat kind of had it worked out even way back then to where you could follow along. And then, of course, I started following Pat very conscientiously, and then I discovered a woman by the name of Casey Cover, she was doing clicker training, and she was trying to find a way to make a living at it. And so she had discovered that back then that the pot-bellied pigs were big. So she was going around the country doing clinics for pot-bellied pig owners, helping them get along with their pigs better. And when I met her, she brought me to meet Dr. Jennifer Zelligs, who was one of her students. and they were doing a horse and a horse training thing. So she invited me down as kind of a colleague, and we once I met Jennifer, my life kind of changed again. So Pat was the first change, and this Jennifer was the second because I have so much information about positive reinforcement training and all training actually. Um, so that's what gives me, I think, a little bit of the special sauce is having those two mentors. And then recently I've been attracted to academic art of writing with Bent Branderup, and his main one of his main instructors is a friend of mine named Christopher Dahlgren, and that's totally fascinating to me. So I've kind of pulled some of that in with the positive reinforcement training as well.
Yeah, wow. I feel like you've got the best of all worlds there in terms of the natural horsemanship, the positive reinforcement, clicker training. And I didn't know you were interested in academic art of writing as well, which is sort of where my interest is at the moment too. So that's really cool. And what does your life look like today in terms of teaching and clinics? And, give us an idea in terms of a day in the life of David.
Well, I took a year off in 2019 to get my knee replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course COVID hit. So I was supposed to get two knees replaced. I never got the second one replaced, and I had to transfer all of my teaching to online
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't tra I was traveling the world. That was my life. It was every month I was gone, and it had sort of evolved to where I would do 2 months in Europe and 2 months in Australia, and then a few other things. But I had nothing. So we built this internet teaching thing with the help of Molly Sanders, Shine a Light Virtual Learning. And I've been a little bit COVID shy, so I haven't really left. The people are out doing live clinics now again, so the internet opportunities they're still there, and I want to do more of them, but I think people are a little bit more interested in having hands-on stuff now that it's safer. So at the moment, I'm not I haven't been teaching anything live, but I am working on building up the portfolio of students online through a coaching system that I do. So every day I have to go and check in and see what the students are doing, and I coach they post a video and I coach it. And I'm going to be traveling for the first time in a few days. I'm going to be going up to Washington State to serve as an advisor on a documentary. So the horse trainer credit in a movie. And in between, I'm fortunate enough to have students here with me now. So we go out and play with horses. Basically, at the moment, we're just trying to recapture what they used to know
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't had a lot of activity, and specifically with the three you know grown horses. One of them is very intimidated by one of the others, and they live together. So all of a sudden, this is a common problem for most people playing with multiple horses, but all of a sudden, it's an issue that I'm having to spend more time with, is helping give the one that gets picked on when I'm not around, and I can't change that, but I can change how he feels about being with the others when I'm there because I can protect him and make sure he feels safe. So that's what I've been doing a day in a life today. And also, I'm playing a lot of music for some reason. I dusted off my bass guitar after 15 years of not playing. I decided to start playing again.
Yeah, cool. I feel like there's quite a few equestrians who are also musically minded. I don't know whether they go sort of hand in hand in terms of the rhythm or, being in that flow state. There seems to be some kind of correlation there.
Well, I believe you're correct. Dr. Miller wrote a little book about it. He said, he started to notice that all of the great horsemen that he knew, and not that I consider myself great, but I am in his book. And he'd find a couple. He'd find a guy. He found Lester Buckley, and oh no, I don't. I'm not musical. I don't play this. Well, after pressing him, turns out he's quite an accomplished violinist.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
just hadn't done it in a long time. But, I think that there is a correlation between maybe not just horses, but probably at least just horses and some kind of creative artistic bent.
Interesting. And with all of the experience that you've had and the different areas that you're interested in terms of horse training, how would you summarize your training approach or philosophy with horses today?
Well, it's pretty simple. There's so much that goes into it, but the simple fact of the matter is that natural horsemanship, ethological horsemanship, where you see people, saying, I want to behave like the horses in the herd so that the herd horses will trust me and they will follow my leadership, and we can communicate the way horses communicate. Is That's based primarily on negative reinforcement in terms of moving the horse and giving them information and motivation as to what to do. With some, of course, we do a lot of things to ingratiate ourselves to them. But uh, the I think I did that. I learned it from Pat Parelli, and then what I learned from Casey Cover and Jennifer Zellig's is this approach of using positive reinforcement and bridge and target training. So, in a nutshell, in negative reinforcement, you can say, move away from this pressure towards something. With positive reinforcement and targeting, you can say, move here. So it's more information. And plus, when you get there, you get a big, bucket of oats or something, right? So now we have more information about where exactly you need to be and what exactly you need to do, and uh, high incentive to do it. So by combining those two things, I think I've got the best of both worlds. Certainly, we have fabulous trainers who never use, clickers or positive reinforcement or bridge and target, and they get great results. Buck Brannaman is one of those. And we have some people who are doing primarily positive reinforcement with horses and trying to eliminate the negative reinforcement, and they're getting some good results. The downside of that, in particular, I see is that when the horses want to play, they're spectacular. But if they have any distraction or some reason not to play, they're missing the ethological piece that says, I'm part of the herd. I'm the protector of the herd. You need to be with me. You need to focus on me. That piece is missing. So we get, in one case, we don't get necessarily the exuberance that we would if we're using some positive reinforcement. And if we're not using any negative reinforcement or ethological training, horsemanship, whatever you want to call it, we're missing out on this herd dynamic that is so powerful and has been proven so for thousands of years. So my approach is using a combination of positive and negative reinforcement that I think outweighs the value of either used alone.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a really balanced approach. I've found that, a lot of people are either extremely one way or the other. What do you think are some of the arguments towards both sides in terms of objections for using positive or negative reinforcement? And what are your thoughts on those arguments?
Yeah, well, of course, the objection to negative reinforcement is they're moving away from pressure, which is an aversive, which means you have to provide an aversive. So, in scientific terms, that's a punisher. We don't need to go into the depths of the science of it, but basically, you're putting in something they don't like, and that is problematic, right? I don't want to wave a flag in my horse's face. I don't want to, tap on his butt to make him feel uncomfortable. So that's one of the objections. But what we discover is that because it's ethological, because it's part of their nature, as long as we don't act predatory, and as long as we first establish ourselves as a safe member of the herd, they don't really particularly take offense at it, and they kind of like knowing where they stand. They feel more comfortable when they can be sure of you and
Mm-hmm.
your responses. So that's the downside of negative reinforcement that people complain about. And of course, with positive reinforcement, they're always talking about, um, well, there's two things. One is he's just doing it for the treats, right?
Yeah.
And this is especially bothersome to me because this type of person, they don't necessarily want to use negative reinforcement, but they don't they don't want to give the horse something that he wants and likes because they're afraid that the horse will like that more than they'll like them. And there's some kind of mystical vision of that the unicorn is going to come and dance with them just
For
because
free.
they're a great dance partner or something. So I think that's a little bit naive. And why would you deny something that they love to them just because you're afraid? That's your own insecurity, I would say. So that's one of the downsides. The other side, of course, is being mugged, for treats, and the horses, it's not that he's only doing it for the treats, but he's only thinking about the treats.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about doing anything except the treats. And those are not easy things to change, but they are simple things to change. The fastest path to the treat is through the behavior. That's a pretty simple way to do it. And if you don't like the behavior he's offering, don't reinforce it. Wait until he's offering a behavior which is commensurate with what you're looking for, which is probably not mugging.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure along your journey, experimenting with these different types of reinforcers, you've had plenty of breakthroughs along the way. And of course, the name of the podcast is Horsemanship Breakthroughs. So I'd love to know from you, what has been your biggest horsemanship breakthrough to date?
Well, I'm fortunate that you sent me these questions in advance because I had to think about it for a minute. Um, as a Liberty horse trainer, I'm always trying to what I've been trying to do is create circus style Liberty dance routines without a round pen or a ring curb out in a big open area on the beach or in a big arena. And there are some circus performers who train in a round pen or a circus ring, and then the horses get so they're pattern oriented. They get so used to that they can actually come out and do things, and we have a few wonderful examples of that. But my thing was, can I teach it without using the round pen? So have been trying to establish this relationship of cooperation when there's less of a safety net, and I think that makes for something stronger. So, in the process of doing that, I have horses going around me in tandem or in triples, and they're going around in the same direction. And I always was too afraid to try to have one going one way and two going the other way. I was just afraid of that it would screw up everything else because I don't have the ring curb to rely on. If there's a mistake, they go every which way. But after visiting with Mustang Maddie and watching her do it, I said, okay, I can do this. And and she had two pairs of horses going in opposite directions, and I decided I would interleave mine. So I have one going left, the next farthest one from me goes right, and the next farthest one goes left, and that was a huge thing. When that happened for me, I was just so joyful. I do have a couple of others. The I call it a weave. So you have three horses traveling in a line, and the first one doubles back and goes between the other two, and then they just keep following this pattern like a juggler. So the left one comes back and goes through the middle, the right one comes back and goes through the middle, the left one comes back through the middle. Now the first one is now on the right, and he's coming back, and this kind of I call it a weave. And this took me a long time to figure out how to do. So that was a big accomplishment. I started it with riding the horses. I got two other riders because it was such a complicated maneuver. And then I would take one horse at Liberty with two riders, and then I would go through each of the horses. So each one individual horse, and then two horses, and finally I could do all three. But getting to the big accomplishment, I did that for a couple of years with two sets of Liberty horses. But this year, I was able to do it without the fence. So I had them next to a fence. The fence kind of supports the whole thing. And just this year, I've been able to do it without that offense. So that was huge for me.
That is incredible. I would love to see. I don't know if you've posted videos of this anywhere on social media, but I think that would be so cool for people to see and inspiring.
They are, and I'll make sure that you have a link to those.
Excellent. I'll pop them in the show notes.
And the last one maybe hit home to you is being able to do at Liberty school halt and haunches in at the walk and trot and starting to do canter now. So adding the academic ground skills, but doing them at Liberty. I'm pretty tickled with that breakthrough.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. That is one of my personal goals is to ride bareback and bridleless Grand Prix dressage one day. Who knows when? I don't have a time frame on it, but that's to me that would be the absolute pinnacle. So hopefully one day we'll see where we go. What is something that you wish that every horse owner would do differently?
Well, I think recognize them as individuals. And I have a little quote that I use, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. For me, it says, I don't see them as horses. I see them as friends. They have names, desires, and needs, as do I. And friends help fulfill each other's needs and desires. So, instead of thinking about them as transportation or, any discipline or anything that you want them to do, first consider them as, buddies. I'm I'm gonna look out for your needs before I look out for my own. And that's if people would do that, their whole life with horses would change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like that quote, is it love the horse first and the sport second? Like we really need to be putting the horse's needs before our own motives in a way, which probably leads into the answer for your next question, I'm guessing, which is what do you think makes a happy horse?
Yeah, well, this is a fairly common question now. In fact, Karen Rolfe had a whole discussion. We had 3 or 4 people on that discussion, including Jennifer Zelligs that I mentioned before. What makes a happy horse, and of course, Linda Parelli now has a whole adventure she's calling Happy Horse, Happy Life. But it's for me, it's not that complicated. Number one, the basics, okay? Food, shelter, room to move, and friendly companions. So I think those are requirements for any horse to be happy. So they can be somewhat happy with, let's say if they live alone and don't have companions, or somewhat happy if they don't have room to move, but they have companions that they can play with over the fence. It doesn't have to be perfect, but those are the basic elements. After that, I think a happy horse is one who has interesting and provocative partners who make learning and doing fun and rewarding.
Mhm.
It's you know, uh, people sometimes call it enrichment, but any interactions, the lack of interaction can actually be boring and they can be unhappy, especially horses that have had the opportunity to have fun and interesting and provocative partners. And then when that goes away, they get, hey, what happened to all the fun?
Mm.
Or especially, as if I would go to Australia for 2 months, the horses are like super eager to play when you get back because they've been doing without that piece. I think it's an important enrichment piece, but it's also an important piece of having horses in captivity, let's say, is keeping their interests and and learning active and making it fun and rewarding and not task oriented or punishing.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you've thought about this too, David, but I've, considered, would horses have a better life if humans weren't involved? But then, I will leave my horses for a few weeks or whatever, and they're just so eager to do things. And I'll call them and they'll come running down and neighing. So that says to me, no, they do enjoy this. And I think it does provide that extra layer of enrichment in their life on top of their basic needs already being met. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea is that we in terms of the basic needs, we put a lot of time and effort into that stuff, right?
yeah,
and and
and
uh
money.
and and money, and it's a hardship to make sure that they're fed and groomed and vaccinated and dewormed and their teeth done and get their exercise, everything that they need physically. um and so it that's fulfilling their needs. So asking them to fulfill our needs after their needs have been fulfilled is kind of it's a mutual thing. I would say it's that's if you're going to take away the fun stuff, you would also take away the stuff that, they're out there on the outbacks, looking for, a blade of grass and being harassed by predators. And, it's they wouldn't necessarily be happier if there were no humans. I think that the question you may be getting at is, would they be happier if I did everything for them and they didn't ask a thing from them? And that's just kind of unfair. I think that's unfair to us to say, I'm not going
Yeah.
to ask anything from you. And when I ask, I always make it worth your while, right? I'm not saying you must do this because I fed you this morning. I'm saying, hey, would you like to do this? Because I think you'll enjoy it. It'll be even more fun than what we were doing before.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this relationship, it's kind of got to be a two-way street. Like any relationship, I guess there's always some kind of benefit to both individuals within that relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I agree. I think they do get a better, safer, healthier life in domestication versus, the wild, so to speak, where there are no humans providing them with those things that make them thrive. But anyway, this is the much anticipated question coming up that I would like to know, and our friend Andrea would like to know. If you could have dinner with any three horse people, dead or alive, who would it be?
Well, my answer to Andrea Waddy, we're talking about, you did a podcast with her, I think.
Yes.
And I said, well, I've been blessed. I've had dinner with a lot of the people. I just was thrilled to be able to, in terms of, horse people and people I want to learn from. And Andrea, of course, one of them. But um, the people on the already list is Katja Schumann, fifth generation circus trainer. She has been a huge influence in my life. Frederick Pignon, he was the one who started Cavalia.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Brandrop, I had dinner with him. I had dinner with someone by the name of Zaley Bullen, you might
Wait,
know.
these are people you've had dinner with
Right. So
already.
I've,
Amazing.
yeah, Bob Miller, Mustang Matty, it goes on. But
Oh
when
my gosh.
when somebody that's not a horse person would ask me this question, who, if you could go back in time in history, who would you want to see? Absolutely, hands down answer, number one answer is Dr. Jim Key. And there's a book out by the name of Beautiful Jim Key, the story of a horse and the man who trained him, something like that. It's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And are you familiar with it?
No, no, I'm not.
Okay, well, I recommend the book. So it happened in the United States, the turn of the century, around 1900, and this guy was a freed slave, self-taught veterinarian and doctor, and he had found this like miracle mud, liniment or mud packs or something to help with healing, and he was traveling around selling this stuff. And he had this horse that he was using as an attraction to sell his veterinary stuff. And it turns out that the horse and he had established this brilliant show that around the turn of the century, millions and millions of Americans saw them at the World's Fair and at all these huge events, that massive pavilions that were always packed with people who come to see him. He could spell by using cards. He could use a cash register and make change. I mean, all of these amazing, amazing things that this horse could do. And they even brought the horse to, I think, Harvard in Massachusetts, and they wanted to know, what's going on here. And the scientist's evaluation, the psychologist's evaluation was an extreme case of learning. So that's who I want to sit on the fence and visit with him as he's training this horse. So that was
Was this the horse that could count, or was that a different case?
yeah, the case of Clever Hans. It was a horse in Europe that could do math problems, and what that case study is used to describe the incredible perception of the horse, that the horse would start pawing when he was asked the question. That was kind of a trained behavior, but he would quit counting when he hit the right answer. because the tiniest facial expression on the trainer would change, like the look of, yes, you made it, a little raised eyebrow, or a little, or a little kind of relaxing of the anxiety about, is he going to make it. And that, that fooled a lot of people until they put the trainer behind a screen, and then the horse
Yes.
couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So that's a different deal. But this horse, they had these pamphlets out. They used the horse in terms of helping develop the Society of Prevention Cruelty to Animals. The pamphlet says he was trained through kindness. He talks a little bit in the book. She talks a little bit in the book about this, the way he was learned to learn the alphabet. He had cardboard cards with the letters on them, and he put sugar water on them, and then he had to go to metal cards because the horse was eating the cardboard cards. And the idea that he was trained through kindness, uh is the other piece of the puzzle that I want to see behind the barn. What was he actually doing with the horse? The two things that I do know is, he had three different wives. He married sisters, one after the other, when they passed away, and he had no children. So I think he was spending too much time with the horse, for starters. And he forgot where I was going with this. Oh, yes. So why am I just now, you know, in the in the 21st century, finding out about this guy? And the woman who wrote the book, I think her name is Riva, or Reeve something. Uh, she the whole last third of the book is references from magazines, newspapers, periodicals, books of all kind about this horse and his show and this man, this doctor. Um, and I think it's because he was black. He was. I think the idea that that a former slave, that this story was lost, completely lost. So I'm thrilled that it's making its way back. And I can't recommend the book highly enough. I sent the book to Morgan Freeman, who is an incredible actor, and I know that he has horses.
Mhm.
And I saw later on that he did purchase the film rights to the book, but I don't see that, that's been years, and I don't see that anything has happened with it. But I did tell him,
You're
that
friends with Morgan Freeman.
I did tell him I'd work on the movie for free if he if he needed some horse help.
Oh my goodness.
So Dr. Jim Key, the turn of the century, that's number one. And then I had three others that I was thinking about. Will Rogers, you know who he is. He was a political satirist who was a world champion in roper, and performed on vaudeville stages all over the United States. Les Hilton would be an interesting one because he's the one that trained Mr. Ed.
Mhm.
And then, just because I'm talking to you, I thought maybe I'd like to meet J.D. Wilton. Most people don't know who he is, but I think in Australia people know who he is.
I don't know if I've heard of that name actually.
No, you just look him up. He
Okay.
he had these horse acts that he would do, and he would put a dummy on a horse, and then the horse would jump the jump, and the dummy would fall off. Then two horses would come running up with a stretcher, and the horse that dumped the rider would pick the dummy up and put it on the stretcher, and the three of them would go off to the ambulance.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah,
cool. I'll have to look him
that's
up.
that's part of Australian heritage for sure.
There you go. We're famous for some pretty interesting things. I want to go back to. I still think it's amazing that you've had dinner with Katja Schumann, Frederick Pignon, Bent Branderup. Can you give us like a little bit of an insight as to the sort of discussions you had or any breakthroughs you had from conversations with them?
Well, Katja, is interesting. Probably the most interesting because we've been friends now for 20 years. And I went to see the circus in Boston when I went home to visit my folks. That's like 3,000 miles from here. And my sister said, "Oh, you want to go to the circus in Boston? There's a one ring European style circus called Big Apple Circus, and it was on the cover of the Boston Globe, and she said, "Oh, you should probably go to that." So I went, and the opening of the show was the lights came down, a misty fog filled the circus ring. These six white Arabian stallions came out, milling around, rolling, bucking, jumping, rearing, playing with each other, with this kind of like, peaceful music playing. And then out comes this hooded figure. The horses all kind of circle around and line up around her. They stand on their hind legs and then they walk out. And I went, this is different.
Wow.
And so I wrote her a little note and I said, "Oh, I loved," and later on during, she did these amazing choreographed routines with the horses. And I said, and I just, I loved the way that the horses were free. They didn't have side reins. Everything looked, so beautiful and natural. And I just, to compliment you. And then I sent her to her, by mail in a card. And then I came back to California and I got a call that, she says, "Oh my God, I've been looking for a Pirelli person. I knew that, there's so much that we learned from my family and, all the generations, but I still feel like there's something to learn from this." So we started visiting all the time. And she let me play with these, incredibly well-trained Liberty horses, as an educational piece. And she would hand me the sticks and say, "I'm going for coffee. Just, you know what to do." And I'd be terrified. And I'd say, just get one to come in and while the others are going around and then go back out and then they all come in. That was all I could do. And, and I managed to screw it up so badly that, later on she told me, she says, when you were doing something with Mossad, one of the horses, she says, it took me a week to get him back because
Oh my gosh,
he
really?
was so confused. Yeah.
You
She told me when they all come in, just only one thing. Keep them all lined up. Don't let one push ahead and the other one. Pretty soon you'll be outside and they'll push you out. So make sure you have a perfect line and don't let them cross the line. So I get them all in. They're all lined up perfectly. I go, "Phew." And I look down and every single one of them is stepping on the lash of the long whip that they use. It's like they had completely incapacitated me from using that. They knew exactly what they were doing. So from there, we've been having, Katja has been with me to the Pirelli Ranch. We've co-taught courses. She's just brilliant. So I've learned a ton from her. And she has a tiny little circus in Denmark in the northern part of Jutland now that she's doing in the summertime over there. Fred Pignon, I got lucky enough to know one of the vaulters, who's also fairly famous. His name is Eric Martonovich, and Eric was in charge of getting the vaulting team together for Cavalia when it first started. And so Eric got me to introduced to Frederick, and I got to watch his perform not only the performances, but I got to hang around with him during the day and watch the rehearsals. And he was telling me, for example, that he had these three stallions, and he said they're just, I'm trying everything because during the rehearsal goes okay, but during the show, it's just, it's getting screwed up. They're fighting with each other and they're not listening to me and I'm trying, turnout time. Do I need a bigger turnout area? Do I need to turn them out separately? Do I need to turn them out together? He was experimenting, doing all this stuff. I said, if you gelled them, you probably, you wouldn't have to show up at work at 8 in the morning. You could show up at 4 and do your show at 6. And he said, "Yeah, but I still feel like I have something to learn from them,"
Mhm.
which I thought was that. Now that's something. He did tell me that in terms of the horses, if he lets them just go, at each other, then he's not part of the picture. They do their own show. If he's too rigid and says no, don't bite, don't look at him, don't pin an ear, do nothing, then they lose interest in doing anything. Then they get
Mm.
lackluster and they won't do anything. So he says, I've been trying to find this balance. Um, Ben Brandrup he's a character. That's all I can say. He's worth seeing. What he says is that he's more of a historian than a horse trainer.
Hmm.
But he's pretty smart about the horses, and he is definitely, historian. He knows everything about the history of horse training from Xenophon forwards, and why one technique worked and why one technique was replaced by another and why it should go back to it. And I think he personally discovered the school halt and resurrected it. He found it in some book somewhere and said, "Oh, this looks like it'll work. Let's try it." And he's tried all these things to see why they were done. And he used to be a circus performer. I found out when I met him.
Yeah, wow. So many interesting horse trainers, and yeah, particularly those three. I'm like, oh wow, I'd love to have them on the podcast one day. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, since you're in Australia, you might reach out to Zaley Bullen. She's fascinating. She wrote a great book called Love, Sweat, and Tears.
Okay.
And you read about her life with her, what, as a young woman, she went off to France and to study with someone who was not all that polite to her, and how she came out of that learning and not being, broken. Was, when I met her, I had just read the book and I just said, you have so much respect for me, because she held her own. She did not, the I don't know what to call it. The machoism of the French male kind of put it into a place where the women around him were, it was like a harem, and she refused to participate, to her own demise in some of the training situations. But more power to her. She stood up for her own, and she's a phenomenal trainer.
Yeah, wow. That's two book recommendations that you've already given us. And there's, as you know, one of my questions is, do you have any favorite horse books or resources? Are there any others that you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Just the books from Dr. Zelig's. Animal Training 101 was her first book, and
Hmm.
that discusses all of the techniques in a scientific way and tells you what's the benefits and drawbacks of each, so you can pick and choose how to get the best results for an individual animal on an individual day with an individual training task. So you get to learn so much about it, but there is a lot of information about positive reinforcement training in there.
Hmm.
And then her most recent book is called Mindful Partners. And that's more of a, how do you use these techniques to help the horse uh, be his best self? Like, how can you consider the horse first through these techniques? So that's a little bit more of a not so much of a guide as to how to use the techniques, but how to feel about the techniques, and how to be, and how to listen to the horses so that you know which technique to pull.
Yeah, I have read both of Jennifer Zellig's books, and I really liked Mindful Partners because sometimes when I read more scientific type texts, I get in this kind of mechanical state about training. But then it was so kind of refreshing to hear from someone who is so scientific that she has this side as well. It is an art and a science. And yeah, she just brings that together so beautifully in Mindful Partners. So that is already on our resource book list for our listeners. So I love that you mentioned those.
Excellent. It is called Zen and the Art and Science of Animal Training, I think. But she does talk about it as an art and a science.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. And what has been your best horse related purchase in the last 12 months?
Oh, I really haven't bought much in the last 12 months.
A lot of people say this. Maybe it's me who has the retail shopping addiction.
Yeah, no, well, I probably bought everything that
Yeah.
I could find, but I do have three really, really, or two, I'll say two really cool products that I absolutely love, and I buy them. I continue to buy them because they wear out. They're not they're consumables. The first is called Hands-On Gloves, and you can get them through Amazon, I think, but they also have a website, Hands-On Gloves. And these are like rubber gloves with little fingers all over them, little hard fingers.
Mhm.
And you can use them to just scratch your horse, groom your horse. But what I love about it is that, if you take a curry comb, it's it's using a tool. When you put these gloves on, you can squeeze your fingers and you can use your hands. It feels like you're giving the horse a massage, which you are. And you can also use them for bathing and for the dogs and everything else. But I use them as because the horses, they see you put them on, they come running. And that's I met a woman in Switzerland who was training cows, and she took the challenge to train cows that she didn't raise from babies. These are, adult cows, and she got them to come and stand for her and let her sit on them and ride them and do
Wow.
stuff with them. But she said, she started out I want them to think of me as their personal massage monkey. So she would crawl around under their legs, scratching the itchy spots and crawl around on their backs. And I thought, this is exactly the way I want to do colt starting.
Yeah.
And these gloves really help. I mean, the horses think of me as their personal massage monkey when I'm up there. That's great.
And then suddenly you're lying over their back just to get to that extra itchy spot.
Yeah, they come. I mean, many people have seen this, but it always fascinates me that when I stop, they'll point to the itchy spot they want you to rub. They'll whether it's in their flank or their hind leg or their shoulder, they'll nip it, and then they'll hey, come on, this spot.
Hmm.
The other product is called Hawk Shields. Hawk Shields. It's like it sounds. And she developed a product that can go on the hawk that doesn't fall off and doesn't bind, and it protects them from getting those hawk sores from laying down on hard surfaces.
Yeah.
And she also has some that go on the fetlocks now because some horses, when they go down like on their knees and they rub there. So her name is Sherry Click, but those are fabulous products and nothing else works. I've tried everything else that's out there because they stay on.
Mm. Yeah, I remember I used to have a horse who would always get those little sores on her hocks from lying down for too long on hard ground. And I never found a solution for that, but they sound really interesting. I've also wanted to put like a big sand pile out so my horses can have a nice soft surface to lie down on, which they frequently do together. So yeah, I think that's a good sign though that horses are lying down for that long.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's the laying down and getting up
Yeah.
where it rubs it. And they don't get them in the winter here because everything's muddy. But in the summer, everything gets super dry and hard, and that's difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, we don't keep the horses in stalls. We don't use bedding. You could, spend thousands of dollars on shavings, and there's
Yeah,
no guarantee they would go in there to lay down.
exactly.
Um, but we can't afford it, and these are great for it's only a couple of the horses. It's just the way they get up. It's
Mm,
a problem.
yeah.
But it's she has created a solution that works.
Very cool. I'll have to check them out as well. And David, you've already achieved so much with horses, but I'd love to know what is your ultimate goal?
Yeah, I had to think about this for a minute. I'm going to say it pretty tersely. I like doing cool stuff that the horses enjoy that makes people feel good when they watch it.
I like that.
At some point I had to do an ego check to say, why am I asking this horse to sit in a chair, right? Like this, he's going to break his leg, something, horrible things. What kind of an egomaniac am I that I want to show this? But I started to realize that, they volunteer these behaviors and they love doing it. They love these interactions, and it makes people smile when they watch. So that's my goal.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And I don't know if you have experienced this, but I feel like each horse has their own favorite tasks or exercises or whatever you want to call them. And I don't know if it's based on reinforcement history or whether, because you could have two horses that have both been reinforced fairly equally for the same behavior, but one horse seems to like it more than the other. Do you find that horses have their favorite tricks?
Yes. Instantly, yes.
Yeah.
And often it's the one they think they're going to be reinforced the most for.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's a question of what did they learn most recently, because that's top of mind, and they know, well, I've been teaching Jean-Bet, I'm going to stick my leg out every chance I get, because every
Yeah.
time we've been doing it for the past month, I've been getting paid, well for this. So part of it is, what have you been working on recently, and part of it is, there's some self motivating behaviors, like lying down. Like sometimes horses will lie down after you train them to lie down when you didn't ask them to lie down, because they like the result.
Yeah, it's easy. They get to rest and they get rewarded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, my- I had to change one of those behaviors for my little miniature horse. I was trying to get him to play basketball, which he does now,
Mhm.
but he would pick the thing up and throw it. And we made a little video about that, because that's all he would do with it. I said, well, he's not a shooter. He's a passer. He likes to dish the rock. He likes to pass, and he's a playmaker. He's not the guy that goes to the net and dunks the basketball. So we put a feed pan out, and we filmed 1,000 trials until one of them went in. And made it look like he knew what he was doing. But what happened is I realized why he was throwing it, because there was a certain satisfaction in seeing me have to go across the yard, pick the thing up, and bring it back to him. You
Ah,
know, and so
you to move your feet.
this was a training. I didn't think I would solve it. I thought, well, I'll just pick a horse that likes to hold on to stuff. But it occurred to me when I had a student here, I said, it just occurred to me that he's getting reinforced for doing that when I don't pay him. He's got a kind of a intrinsic motivation for doing it. He likes to see me run and get it. It's like, we like to throw the ball for the dog and watch him running and get it and bring it back. This horse is doing this to me. So I started working in the corner, and when he would toss it, it would land at my feet, and I just say, no, hold on to it. No, hold on to it. And pretty soon we exhausted that tossing behavior. He started to hold on to it. And then from there, it went really fast towards carry it, put it in the hoop, stand on your hind legs, put it in the hoop. And then next thing you know, he's playing basketball.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like there's a lot of kind of like problem solving within those tricks and tasks that you teach. Like when you run into little, I guess, not much of a problem, but it was an interesting thing that happened that you had to go, okay, how are we going to change this?
Yeah, and I'm not brilliant. It took me like 2 years to think. It just all of a sudden it came to me. I went, hey, wait a minute. There's a reason he's doing that. He's being motivated to do it.
Yeah, so interesting. I love that they can
It-
be motivated by their own like intrinsic kind of motivators, not just food alone. One of my
yeah,
horses, if she is given free choice, she'll just go stand on the pedestal. And I genuinely feel like she just likes being taller. She wants to be taller.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
before,
then
yeah,
the
you go.
problem then becomes, how do you train them not to do it? That's another
Yeah,
story.
exactly. Yeah. David, before we wrap up, can you tell us what is the one message that you would like our listeners to take away from today's interview?
Well, it's what I said earlier. I think people should learn about why natural horsemanship, or an ethological approach. Maybe I should define that. The ethology is the study of how animals interact with each other within the same species.
Mhm.
So why natural horsemanship works is because it kind of emulates this herd behavior. So knowing why that works and being comfortable with using negative reinforcement, which is what the horses do with each other, and then learn how it can be greatly enhanced through positive reinforcement. The level of enthusiasm and excitement and commitment and willingness to learn and the speed of learning, all of that just goes through the roof when you layer in positive reinforcement to that formula. So that's the one message, I think, is whether you learn it from me or whether you figure out how to do it on yourself, or this you have a gal in Australia, Georgia Bruce, who does clicker training for horses.
He's been on the
You know,
podcast also.
Hi, Georgia. Yeah, so I have a way of presenting it, but I think the important goal is that you understand that the a multifaceted combination approach will give you results that are, head and shoulders above what you've been getting if you've been stuck in one or two or the other of those two modalities.
Yes, love that. I'm all about that as well. I think, people are going to get a lot out of this episode, and I'm sure that they'll be wondering, how can I learn more from David? So can you tell us where people can find out more about you and what you offer?
I have a landing page on the web. It's just my name, davidlichman.com. Just make sure you spell it right. And then from there, you can follow to my online learning opportunities. I have a Facebook group that's open to everyone, where people share their stuff, and we have challenges in there. We have, we offer little training challenges for a couple of months to see, how much people can get accomplished in a couple of months with their horses. And then I have a private coaching group, which people submit videos every week. But all of those things are explained in my on my landing page, just davidlichman.com. That's the easiest way to get there.
Perfect. And we'll pop that in the show notes as well. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast today. I personally got a lot out of today's episode, and it's been an absolute honor to have you here. Thank you so much again.
You are most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Make sure you hit the follow button so you get notified every time a new episode is released. And if you've learned even just one small thing from today's show, I would really appreciate if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or screenshot this episode and share it on social media. You can connect with me on Instagram at Amalia_horses or my website amaliadempsey.com, where you can find free resources to help you on your horsemanship journey. That's all for today. Thanks for being here. Remember to train with kindness and ride with excellence, and I'll see you